Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the Executive. My name is Councillor Paul Follows, Leader of the Council and Chair of this meeting of the Executive, and the meeting is being held here in the Council Chamber at the Berries in Godalming and also webcast live. The agenda was published on Monday, the 5th of January 2026. Barry, are there any apologies for absence?
No, with no apologies tonight.
Thank you very much, as we are in fact all here. Item 2, the minutes. Could I have the minutes from the 9th and 10th of December to follow at the next meeting on the 10th of February, at which point I will sign those. Item 3, declarations. Are there any members with any declarations of interest they wish to declare? Nope, seeing none. Questions from members of the public. There have been no questions from members of the public. Questions from members. There have also been no questions from members, in which case we'll move then swiftly on to item 6. Leader and portfolio holders updates. So first of all, happy new year everyone, and welcome back for what I am confident is going to be a somewhat busy year. This is of course the last full year of the existence of Waverley Borough Council, and it will include the elections to the shadow authority of the new West Surrey Unitary. The precursor entity for the West, tasked with much of the work to set up this new authority, is the West Surrey Voluntary Joint Committee, and this is made up of representatives from Surrey County Council and each of the districts and boroughs in the West. Following approval here at Waverley full council to participate in this before Christmas, excuse me, I'll be joining the first of these meetings on Friday in Woking. It just so happens also that Councillor Townsend is also a member of this committee, but as a Surrey County Council appointment. I have also made some small changes to the executive that came into effect on Monday. So Councillor Adam Juice is hereby appointed to the vacant position of portfolio holder for environment and sustainability. The role is otherwise unchanged, and Councillor Liz Townsend is appointed as Deputy Leader of the Council with no other changes to her role. I would like to welcome Adam to the group and congratulate you both on your new roles, and also to Liz and Philip on the birth of their first grandchild just before Christmas as well. I'd like to thank Steve Williams for all of his work since 2019, and of course Tony Fairclough, who has served as Deputy Leader of this Council with dedication and hard work and has been invaluable support both to me and to this administration. Now, finally, I'll be joining Leader of Guildford Borough Council in a briefing to staff on LGR next week, and would repeat my pre-Christmas message to all of you here, but also to members in general, that we continue to be kind and supportive to our staff, both here and at Guildford, as we will go through this LGR transition. It is going to be a bit of a tough year all round for officers and members, although for very different reasons, as we go through this next year. So I will now move to all other members, starting with Liz, after you.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you for the trust you've placed in me in appointing me as Deputy Leader. I'd like to also welcome Adam. I've worked with him at Waverley Training Services, and I know he's going to bring a wealth of experience to the role of that he's taking on the exec. And I'd also like to thank Tony Fairclough. I obviously are following in some impressive shoes, and his hard work and commitment has been very clear throughout his time as Deputy Leader. I know that it's going to be a very busy year and a tough challenge with local government reorganisation, and I'm sure that this executive, which has some really impressive members and a wealth of experience as well, will rise to that occasion and do their very best for the communities that they serve.
Thank you, Liz. I'm going to go around starting with Janet this time. Janet, anything to add tonight?
No, thank you. You'll hear enough from me later, I think.
Thank you, Janet. Kika?
Thank you. Just a quick update on the museum. Repair of the roof timber supporting beams at the museum is going well, and this element of the project needs to be completed over winter as they can restart the facade in the spring. Work on the longer-term operational management of the museum is currently being looked at by officers. And Waverley would like to thank Farnham Town Council for their financial support for the service into the future, and for Farnham Malting's professionalism whilst the operational structure is defined. Regarding leisure centres, as ever, this time of year is extremely busy for our leisure centres, with everyone carrying out their New Year resolutions. Farnham Leisure Centre also has the additional challenge of having new ground source heat pumps installed, funded externally, to replace the old gas boilers. Given the demand of the centre, these pumps are significant in size and have necessitated the closure of the leisure centre car park. During this installation of 5 months, users are asked to park in Brightwells Yard car park, and if payment is made within the leisure centre, they will be charged the same amount as if using the normal car park. And if they have any questions, please ask the staff at the leisure centres. That's all, thanks.
Thank you, Kika. Paul?
Thank you, Leader. Nothing exciting to add to this meeting, so I'll leave it at that point.
Dare I ask that we don't necessarily have exciting as the qualification to speak, otherwise we may never say anything. Mark.
Well, follow that on a finance thing. So, as you know, Leader, our work on the 26-27 budget cycle started back in October with a series of boards which challenged the business as usual budgets of each individual service line. But as expected, the provisional local government finance settlement for 26-27 to 28-29, a multi-year period, was announced on the 17th of December last year by MHCLG. It is provisional, but it is also multi-year, which is a very welcome breakthrough. The first time since I've had this role that's actually happened. We've been waiting for it all that time and longer. So our finance team's been working diligently since then to finalise our draft general fund budget, an MTFP, our draft housing revenue account budget, and our draft capital strategy for 26-27. In addition to the finance settlement and operational pressures, it's clear that inflation remains a key stress point at levels sustained way above everyone's expectations this time last year. And in 26-27, we'll also be burdened with the costs, financial and non-financial, of the preparation for the transition to the new West Surrey unitary. When complete, these draft budgets will come to this executive on the 10th of February and full council on the 25th of February. But in the meantime, can I thank our team again for the exceptional and outstanding work pulling all of this together under intense pressure. And in the same breath, welcome Andrew Vallance, who's joined us as Joint Assistant Director of Finance and Deputy 151, who brings with him a wealth of skills and experience, which will be essential in such a challenging year. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark, and welcome, Andrew. Tony.
Thank you, Paul. Yeah, with respect to regulatory services, the shared service with Guildford is proceeding, as you know, in line with the plan. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank, in particular, Richard Homewood, but also the other senior officers for working so hard to achieve what we hope will be achieved over the next 3 or 4 weeks or so. So thank you, Richard.
Thank you, Tony. Gemma.
Nothing from me today, Leader.
Thank you, Gemma. Victoria.
Thank you very much, Leader. I would just like to place on the record that I am very pleased that we are hosting a joint executive later this evening. I feel this is a testament to our collaborative partnership with Guildford, and I would like to thank all of our officers for their hard work in setting everything in place for this. I would also like to place on the record my thanks to Councillor Williams for his work as a portfolio holder for climate change and environment, and to Tony for his work as Deputy Leader, and I would like to welcome Liz and Adam to their roles.
Now, Adam, I said this to your illustrious predecessor on a number of occasions, but you don't necessarily have to always speak in this particular section. But if you would like to, it is now your turn.
Just to say hello, I'm 2 days into the role. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Right, in which case then moving on to item 8, financial monitoring Q2. That is with Mark to introduce, and I'll be listed as seconder. So after you, Mark.
Very good, thanks, Leader. So this is the Q2 financial monitoring report, which forecasts the full year outturn for the year against the approved budget based on the experience of the first 6 months to the 30th of September 2025. On the revenue side, both the general fund and the housing revenue account are forecasting full year underspends of around £452,000 and £933,000 respectively, against their approved budgets. While we continue to exercise strong financial controls across services, alongside active monitoring by finance officers and budget managers, as we've discussed before, the significant proportion of the favourable variances continues to be driven by staffing vacancies, which I want to be clear, again, is not sustainable in the long term, and certainly does not reflect reduced service need. Recruitment remains a priority in a number of areas, And while these underspends should reduce as posts are filled, we operate in an extremely tough labour market nationally, which LGR, local government reform, is only making worse. Alongside this, we're seeing income overperformance in areas such as planning and building control, which is very welcome, but will continue to be closely monitored given the wider economic climate. I do want to draw members' attention to the key pressure in this report, which is within the homelessness service. We're forecasting a £246,000 overspend, primarily due to increased costs of temporary accommodation. But this is a national issue and reflects ongoing demand pressures. But we have a reserve held specifically to mitigate this kind of pressure, and this report does seek approval for a supplementary estimate of £246,000 to be funded from that Homeless Prevention Grant Reserve. Turning briefly to capital, the report shows a forecast slippage of around £2 million in the General Fund Capital Programme and about 1.7 million in the HRA programme. These variances largely reflect project phasing, procurement delays and timing issues rather than the cancellation or withdrawal of schemes, and the relevant budgets will be carried forward where appropriate. Many members will also see detailed updates on reserves and debt. Our reserves remain strong and continue to provide resilience against financial risk and volatility, including the financial stress of transitioning to the new unitary. So I commend the recommendation to the executive. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark, and also my thanks to the team for the clarity that comes with these financial monitoring reports. As someone who's had to start looking at some of the equivalent material at some of the other councils in Surrey, I can say these are a damn sight easier to get your head around. Just reflecting on that point, though, regarding the homelessness service, if we are seeing that sort of pressure down here where homelessness is historically low compared to some of the other parts of West Surrey, this is likely to be an issue that presents itself with more severity elsewhere in the West. Are there any other comments anybody would like to make? In which case, seeing none, I'll move to the recommendations which are listed on page 6, 2.11 and 2.12. Can I have all those in favour, please show? Thank you very much indeed. Item 9, the procurement pipeline, which is also to be proposed by Mark, with myself as seconder. Mark.
Okay, very quickly, this one, Leader. So I think we're all now becoming familiar with these regular update reports. Since our contract procedure rules were revised in 2024 to require that in respect of procurement that will result in a key decision, the procurement team obtains executive agreement before commencing the procurement, and that the executive approve the consequent award of contracts unless otherwise delegated. So the update today seeks to approval to commence procurement of one additional project, which is the asbestos survey and removal contract. This is a long-term contract estimated at £1.6 million over a 3+1 year term, and it's required to ensure that the council continues to meet its statutory health and safety responsibilities, particularly within housing services. Again, I want to be clear that approval today is permission to commence the procurement process only. It does not commit the council to awarding a contract to a specific procurement route or to to any collaboration arrangements. Any resulting contract award that does constitute a key decision will come back to this exec for separate approval. I commend the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, and my thanks to Faye and the team, not just for the work they've done here, but also in bringing a lot of this procurement stuff back into order after a few years of it being somewhat out in the wilderness. Right, any other comments, anyone? Nope, in which case I move then the recommendation as outlined on page 2 of that report, 2.11 and 2.111, and I have all those in favour. Thank you very much indeed. Item 10, tenancy strategy amendments following consultation. I think that probably needs to be moved by one of the two housing portfolio holders rather than me. So Janet, if you wouldn't mind moving that, and I will second it. And we will have in a moment one speaker, but after you if you want to introduce. Sorry, microphone, Janet. Sorry.
So all councils are required to have a tenancy strategy, as I'm sure you know, to guide how housing providers support tenants, keep communities strong and make homes affordable and meet local housing needs. The Waverley tenancy strategy applies equally to our own council homes and to housing associations operating in our area, and we expect our partner affordable housing providers to consider this tenancy strategy when developing their own tenancy policies. The last tenancy strategy update was in 2022, and it ended the use of flexible tenancies for Waverley Council homes. This 2025 update has a stronger focus on affordability, with the goal of preventing homelessness and supporting tenants to maintain their tenancies by ensuring rents are not set at levels that lead to arrears or eviction. Consultation was carried out between 29th of September and the 26th of October 2025. Officers presented the draft tenancy strategy to the tenant panel in October and the Landlord Services Advisory Board in early November 2025. The main points emerging from the feedback were around the themes of affordability and supply, which probably won't surprise anyone. Other comments included repair standards, communication, a request for increased support in managing money, finding work and managing homes, taking into account access needs of disabled residents. So why the update now? Well, in 2024, the Regulator of Social Housing published a new tenancy standard. Waverley updated its affordable housing supplementary planning document in 2023 with capped affordable rents, which is 65% to 70% of local market rent. And to tie in with the new affordable homes delivery strategy, Healthy Homes, which was adopted in December 2025. By having an up-to-date and fit-for-purpose tenancy strategy, we will be in a stronger position to make the best use of affordable housing, prevent homelessness and support tenants to succeed in their tenancies, help people move on when they no longer need affordable housing, encourage mixed sustainable communities where people feel secure and connected, and tackle under-occupation and overcrowding. And Guildford Borough Council is adopting an identical strategy, so the two neighbouring councils take the same approach. So for all the reasons above, I would be grateful if you can support the recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet, and also to Esther and Alice and those in the housing team who will be the ones that drafted this report, and to all those who responded to the consultation. Before I bring in anybody else from the exec, can I welcome Councillor Hyman? Happy New Year, Jerry. After you.
Thank you. Yes, Happy New Year to all of you, and congratulations also to Councillors Liz Townsend and Adam Deuce for their promotions. Yes, this is a fairly simple. I mean, obviously, we all support the updating of the strategy to reflect the consultation and the results of the consultation. Although not there weren't thousands of responses. I don't think there were any surprise to anybody. Obviously, with affordability being raised as a priority issue, I'm slightly concerned that the only changes that have been made to the strategy are in mentioning that and as an update rather than actually changing the strategy to reflect it. Of course, it starts tonight because it's an executive decision which you can take very shortly, and it doesn't have to go to council. So I'm just wondering what the next stage is. On your page 44 in front of you, members, next steps, it says that following adoption, the next phase is to focus on ensuring effective implementation. That can only be, I assume, really taken as being that the next thing to do is to minimise rent levels if we are putting this effectively implementing the new strategy or the new priority in the strategy, and that requires a strategy to do so, which I haven't really seen in detail in the changes that have been made. Correct me if I'm wrong. This does say that at 4.1 that we're going to be updating internal policies and procedures to align with the strategy. But obviously the question which I think most of our residents will want to know is that will our residents see this reflected in the budget? If we are going to be adopting this, obviously adopting it for next year, that isn't much help because we won't exist. If we're going to try and keep the rents down to a minimum, then we've got to start working on that immediately and in this current budget. And I just wondered what proposals you've got in respect of minimising the cost of the housing service, minimising waste and inefficiencies. You know, if we're genuine about this, if we're listening, how is this going to be reflected in the budget and in actual actions that we're going to be taking? That's all really. That can we get on with implementing this, please, and what does it really mean as to the tenants? Thanks.
Thank you, Jerry. A couple of things on that before I bring in anybody else. So in terms of reporting back, the reporting vehicle for this is usually the Landlord Services Advisory Board, and I'd assume that will be exactly the same going forward here. I would also just not confuse affordable with seeking the minimum, and I would really just add there that the housing revenue account doesn't just support existing tenants with their needs. It is how we build more houses to deal with an established need within our borough. And so the rents being charged do follow that sort of at least dual, if not more, requirements of the HRA to deliver the whole business plan, which is not just about supporting, but building new properties. And so it is always about that balance. And also, of course, there are set formulae to how we set rent as well within the system. So there's a number of pressures that are balanced within this. The other thing I would just also add is that it's very good that Guildford and Waverley are doing the same thing here, as we will represent a material quantity of the stock of the new West Surrey. And I can't imagine that new unitary authority is going to be rushing to make changes to housing policy such as this within its first few years, particularly where there's a benefit to tenants. So I would encourage, as ever, for people to attend the Landlord Services Advisory Board or to be appointed to it if there are vacancies within your group, which I believe there are, to work with this going forward. I'll now bring in Janet and then I'll come to anybody else.
Yes, just very quickly. Yes, I want to thank Alice and Esther too, and I'm sorry I forgot to say that right at the start. All strategies do tend to get turned into operating plans, and I've no doubt that this will indeed become translated into some sort of operating plan. And Esther, I can see there on screen, is nodding to that. So I think that will be the major next step, just to sort of get back to Jerry's point there. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments, anyone? Mark?
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to pick up on something Jerry said about looking for efficiencies and looking for economies. You know, when I observe the Landlord Services Advisory Board, I hear mostly talk about the quality of the service, the value for the money, rather than the money that's being spent. And I do just want to flag that not every economy, not every efficiency is a true economy or an efficiency. And we live in a world where false economies are often presented as being something that's at the bottom of some mythical rainbow. When I listen to the Landlord Services Advisory Board, it is about value for money and not saving money, cutting corners, pursuing mythical economies at all costs. And that needs to be said out loud at every opportunity.
Liz?
Thank you, and thank you again to Alice and Esther, and for all their help with supporting me personally, if any issues that I have with council tenants or people that are have got homes through registered providers. They are so helpful at all times. And I'd just like to say to Jerry, you know, this does need to be read with our affordable housing strategy as well. So it's sort of, you know, a sister document, so to speak. And, you know, the changes, there are changes obviously throughout it. And I'm very pleased to see, you know, the supporting our armed forces community within this as well. But also this sets a clear line in the sand for other affordable housing providers. You know, it sets our expectation not only for ourselves, but what we expect from them as well. So it is really, really helpful document. And I think we've got some really useful documents within this area, which I'm sure will be really helpful going forward for local government reorganisation, that they will see the type of housing, the type of ethos and culture that we have always pursued within this council. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Anyone else? Paul?
Well, I would like to agree with everything everybody has said on that subject, and especially for the input and help from our wonderful officers. But I do want to point out that our tenants panel and landlord services advisory board, both of them have put in a considerable amount of work reviewing these things. And the last Thursday in the month is the date for your diary to be at the Landlord Services Advisory Board. 10 o'clock, be there, or, well, I don't know. Just be there.
I think with most council meetings, it's be there and be square simultaneously. But it is, I believe, the rent setting discussion LSAB, isn't it, for this year? So one of the more important LSABs of every calendar year. Right. Any further comments, anyone? In which case, then I will move to, are the recommendations set out in the report agenda item 10 agreed? Can I have all those in favour, please show? Thank you very much indeed. Item 11, which will be the Cranley Leisure Centre new build, which I think Liz is introducing, of which I will second, and we have one registered speaker afterwards again, Councillor Hyman. Liz.
Thank you, Leader. This report for you this evening provides an updated position on the Cranley Leisure Centre new build project, including a reviewed and independently assessed cost plan. In October 2023, the Council approved a project budget of 31.5 million. Since that time, following further design development, market testing and contractor pricing, it's become clear that this scheme can no longer be delivered within that original budget, and we are therefore seeking approval to increase the overall budget, project budget by approximately 4.8 million. The exact figures are obviously within your papers, bringing the total to just over 35.9 million. I want to be very clear about what has changed and why. Firstly, the project team has successfully secured 2.65 million of community infrastructure levy funding, and this funding has already been allocated and approved for use towards the leisure centre build and associated infrastructure, which included increased car parking provision and electric vehicle charging. However, while the allocation itself has been approved, it has not yet been formally added to the project budget. So this report seeks approval to do exactly that. And the funding is now included in the budget you're being asked to approve this evening. And that leaves a residual amount of funding requirement of about 2.2 million. And the proposal is that this is funded through borrowing, while officers will continue to seek additional funding opportunities as the project progresses. Members will not be surprised to hear, and Marcus touched on it slightly, that the primary driver for the increased budget is the continued rise in construction costs across the industry. And over the past couple of years, we've seen unprecedented inflation in building materials and labour, and key components that we use within leisure centre construction, such as concrete and steel, have seen some reported increases of, from 25% to 40% to even 50%. And although the rate of increase has now slowed, thankfully, costs do continue to rise, and labour costs also remain a significant pressure. The revised budget includes contingencies of approximately 12%, reflecting these ongoing risks associated with inflation and market volatility. And this is a prudent and necessary provision to the current construction climate. I also want to address an issue raised strongly through public consultation, and the impact of the build on village centre car parking. And in response, the tender process specifically required contractors to retain as much car parking as possible throughout the construction programme. And this has also resulted in an additional cost of £358,000 and an extension to the programme by approximately 9 weeks. However, it does directly respond to residents' and businesses' concerns, and officers will continue to explore further options to support parking during the build phase. Turning to the design itself, the proposed passive house certification is a critical element of this scheme. It guarantees the energy and operational carbon performance of the building and is guaranteed to reduce energy costs by around 60% compared with a standard leisure centre build. And it also future-proofs this facility. The building is designed to last well into the 2080s, drawing on lessons learned from existing UK passive house leisure centres, such as St Sidwell's Point in Exeter and the Eclipse Leisure Centre in Spelthorne. These buildings are designed to withstand climate change and reduce operational stress on plant and machinery, and extend component lifespans and significantly reduce life cycle costs by avoiding expensive refurbishments. As a result, we are forecasting a substantial reduction in annual energy costs compared with the existing centre. By contrast, Independent Building Service have confirmed that retaining the current leisure centre will cost the council approximately 7.3 million over the next 5 years just to keep it operational. And that expenditure would deliver no improvement to the facility, no increase in income and no return on investment. And further funding would still be required to retain provision in the longer term. So the recommended option before you delivers the council approved scheme, a passive house certified leisure centre with the agreed facility mix. Importantly, it also turns what is a deficit asset at the moment into a positive revenue generator. The build contractor has now priced the main works based on the latest detailed designs, and these costs have been rigorously reviewed, analysed and challenged by Atkins Realis, the council's appointed cost consultants, who have confirmed that the cost plan is acceptable and reflects current market conditions. As we move into the next stage, a value engineering process will take place with the contractor to explore further efficiencies without compromising the design intent or performance of the building. Members should also be clear about the alternatives. Halting the project at this stage would represent a reckless waste of the significant public funds already invested and could leave Cranley without a leisure centre altogether, particularly given, as we know, that Waverley is due to be wound up in 2027, and we know the significant pressures that will face the new West Surrey Council. Removing the passive house element would require redesign costs and would still leave the project requiring additional borrowing. While it would marginally reduce capital costs initially, it would remove the guaranteed energy savings of around £125,000 per year at a minimum and extend the payback period to nearly 59 years, undermining the viability of the business case. In closing, I would like to thank the Executive for its continued support for this project so far, at a time when many parts of the country are seeing public swimming pools and leisure centres closing. This council has remained committed to the health and well-being of its residents, and at the same time we are delivering on our climate emergency commitments. So I commend this report to the Executive and ask for your support this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Liz. Just to confirm also, this is internal borrowing for that second section, subject to us finding other alternatives as well. So we're making sure we're covering our bases going forward. I've got one registered speaker out of the exec in the form of Councillor Hyman, but just to remind everybody, including Councillor Hyman, that there are exempt items in this report and should not be referred to in open session. I am not intending to move into part 2 at any point during this discussion. Councillor Hyman, after you.
Oh, well, I'm so disappointed about that, but no, actually, I had no intention of going anywhere near the exempt annexes. I don't think there's any need to. I just wanted to perhaps save a little bit of time because there was quite a debate, quite a lengthy debate on this matter, as you know yourself from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee recently, and it could be quite lengthy on the 27th of the month when it goes to full council. So I just wanted to cover one main issue. I'm not going to go near the car parking and the rest of it. I'm slightly disappointed that we haven't got a full run history here in front of us, which would have been very easy to do, to let people know that, you know, what the initial estimates were for the costings from the feasibility and then through to the initial when it first went to council in 21. In 23, we start in 23 when it was at 31 million here. I appreciate we've got the SIL now and that we're going to be, it says in the documents here that we're going to be looking for a further CIL if possible to try and pay for this. But it is, of course, the big issue here is the huge increase in costs of the project since it first came forward. Not unusual for public sector projects like this, but and there's been obviously a bit of hefty inflation in the middle in building costs. We all know that, but nevertheless, when things double in price and keep going upwards, I recall very well that in October 23, when this came forward, I asked for a red line on this. Where is the red line at which we decide we're not going to proceed because we're going to, because there's a limit to what we can expect residents to pay for something, even though it's we are committed to the health of our residents. We are also even more committed to proper management of the council and proper management of residents' money. And again, it's gone up 5 million and. we know that the next stage is to review the costs without compromising the design. It says that at paragraph 6.11 on very bottom, page 103. There don't seem to be any guarantees as here of no further cost increases. In fact, perhaps the opposite, because it sounds like it could be a two-stage increase. With this is just the first part, and the further one might be coming if you reading from what it says at 6.11. So the impression that I'm getting from this, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that there is no limit on what we will spend on this, and that I think has to be very concerning in terms of dealing with contractors and residents' payment. So, you know, does the can you tell me, rather than me have to question it at council, and other people will be doing so as well, I would assume, does the executive actually have a limit on this, or will you set one now? If not, if so, what is that limit? Or is there no limit on what we're going to spend on this? Because it has to be a concern given the history. Thanks, Leader.
Thank you. Just before I bring in Mark, who I'm sure will want to respond to some of that as well. I mean, the underlying point of this entire project is that it's actually self-financing over the life of the asset. We would be having to make a decision right now to effectively not have a leisure centre in Cranley, because ultimately the current leisure centre is way beyond its life, and it either needs to be replaced or shut down. I think even an outside non-accountant's view of the balance sheet of the West Surrey Unitary, such as it is unlikely to be able to bear, with the sorts of debt and other issues it's got, any kind of project like this in somewhere like Cranley. I just don't think it's going to be remotely viable under the Unitary. And so if we don't do it, we are effectively looking at Cranley having nothing, and probably nothing forever, or at least for the foreseeable future, if we do nothing. Whilst I don't think anybody's going to sit here and say we're okay with unlimited costs, I am personally comfortable with this as long as it remains self-financing, as it does under this proposal. And at that point, I'll bring in Mark.
Well, thank you, Lee. You've stolen my thunder. So I'll go in reverse order. Paragraph 11.3, recommended option 1, makes it very, very clear that we would not be contemplating this if this project did not pay for itself. There is a longer payback period, but there is a limit, and the limit is, does this thing pay for itself or not? So everything else, taxpayers funding it, taxpayers contributing to it, is all redundant, because this is paying for itself through the users of the facility who may not even come from Waverley. They may come from over the border, they may come from West Sussex, they may come from all over the place. It will pay for itself. That is the acid test. Of course, we're heading into an election cycle. We're going to hear all sorts of stuff about inefficient government and cost creep and all that sort of stuff. The report also makes it very, very clear that a big factor here is rate inflation. It is not additional works. It is rate inflation. Even Rumpelstiltskin would know that this country has gone through an extremely stressful period of rate inflation, where the costs have exploded for raw materials. You can't get skilled labour for love nor money. It is a credit to us and to our officers that we are still here discussing a self-funding passive house standard leisure centre for Cranley after everything that's been thrown at us, justified or not.
I think the phrase that always comes back to me is the one that came up, I think, in the just before the elections in 2019, which was the opposition, well, the then administration's claim that they were going to have a multi-million-pound investment in Cranley Leisure, which they didn't remotely cost in any way, shape, or form. So I'll be very interested if any of them want to go back to that comment and see what the inflation of the cost has been, because nobody ever said. Liz.
Yeah, and thanks, Jerry. Thanks for your comments. And I know there was a debate at the ONS, and I attended that meeting and spoke at that meeting, and clearly on page 114 on the agenda, it clearly outlines what was said by the ONS and the response to that. And as has been said already, we wouldn't be looking at this project further if it wasn't still supported and in its own self-funding within the lifetime of the asset itself. And, you know, we've had the costs independently reviewed. Atkins Realis have said that they are reasonable, and we also have that 12% contingency, which we are hoping that won't all be needed, but obviously there's quite a large contingency in there to cover what might be some rising costs. But the team are also quite confident that they can do some value engineering further down the project and also save some additional costs that way. But also the energy savings on this, the expectation of the energy savings, the PV panels, which produce about 25% of the electricity needed, and the passive house construction, you know, we could be seeing even greater energy savings than the 60%, but we're basing it on that 60% energy savings. So I think, you know, I'm very grateful that for the support of the executive. I do know that the alternative, if there was no leisure centre within Cranley, that would have a huge impact on our high street. The leisure centre brings in thousands of visitors, and they also will stop in our high street, and it would be a huge blow not only to obviously the health and well-being. This isn't just somewhere where people go just to use the gym. You know, this facility provides cardio rehab, stroke rehab. We have the Parkinson's bikes. You know, it provides a really huge level of service to people. And if we didn't have that, it would be a huge blow to Cranley and to the health and well-being, swimming lessons for schools, etc. You know, it isn't just for people to indulge in a bit of leisure. It really is a health and well-being facility for the people of Cranley and the surrounding villages. The catchment is quite wide. So it supports our corporate strategy and all of the things that we aspire to provide to our residents. So I do hope that people will feel able to support it this evening. Thank you.
I mean, certainly when this comes to full council, I'm going to go slightly further than that, because as far as I'm concerned, as long as this remains self-financing, a vote against this is effectively a vote to close the leisure centre in Cranley without replacement, with all the consequences that go with that. And I simply, as long as this is self-financing in the way that it still remains, that is an unacceptable option for the east of this borough, and I won't countenance it at full council. Anybody who pretends that this is costing residents money or any of these other issues that keep being brought up inaccurately. Adam.
Yes, I just want to vocalise my full support for the increased expenditure. I think the concerning point of view that Councillor Townsend raised of, you know, if we were to review costs and make this cheaper in terms of negating the passive house standard would be a real fly in the face of our commitment to net zero by 2030. I think if we're going to spend this amount of money, we need to do it right. And it also symbolises what future public spaces can look like by putting to the same standard financial priorities.
Absolutely. Kika and then Tony.
Yeah, just to say that leisure centres are not just about swimming and playing, you know, dance classes. They've changed fundamentally, and working with everyone active, the sort of things that they provide now in terms of support for health is just extraordinary. It is really important that Cranley has this. You're right out on a limb there, and you support all those other villages that are coming around you. So I absolutely support you on this, and I'm very pleased that this is going ahead. Thanks.
Noting, of course, Cranley has also been a high area of housing growth and will continue to be so. I can't see any reason why it won't be under the current government's proposals either. So, Tony, after you.
Thank you, Paul. I've just got a question in relation to, spoiler alert, what's coming up later in the joint exec, the issue of internal carbon pricing. We don't mention it within this report, and I wondered whether it was something that we would be considering and whether that indeed provides further justification for doing a project like this, in particular the passive house element.
Subject to that item being confirmed by the joint executive in the meeting after this one, that is a discussion I'd like to have with financing to use the passive house leisure centre as I think probably the most significant test case of internal carbon pricing that any of us could probably name. I think it'd be a really useful case study on its application within Waverley Borough Council. So that was in fact going to be my suggestion as well. Liz.
Yeah, thanks, Tony, for saying that. As you know, we've been discussing about the energy demands and that earlier, and you know, the actual, we're going to include a graph in the next report to council so that they can see how the energy demands are between, you know, the current centre and the new passive house centre, and also the other passive St Fidwell's Point, which I mentioned earlier, and also the Spelthorne one as well. So we are looking at providing more on that energy, and that's not just because of cost savings. It is because of those energy costs and that carbon footprint, and how we are trying to show that we're not only providing a leisure centre, but we're also trying to protect the environment, because our leisure centres account for a huge amount of our carbon emissions, and you know, we've been working hard on our other leisure centres and trying to reduce those as well. But Cranley is the, you know, the huge contributor at this stage, and to get this down to probably one of the you know, most energy efficient community leisure centres in the country, it will probably be. So it will be a considerable achievement, but also a considerable saving on emissions, and also on the actual energy costs each year, financial energy costs.
Right, I'd like to wrap it up there and move to the recommendation. And so are the recommendations set out in the report agenda item 11 agreed? Can I have all those in favour please indicate? Thank you very much, everyone. Moving then on to item 12, new affordable housing delivery, Chiddingfold supplementary budget allocation. I again remind everybody this contains exempt annexes. I believe that's with Janet to introduce and me to second.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, indeed. We're delivering 26 new affordable homes across 5 sites in Chiddingfold. It's quite a complex build, of which 2 are completed and the remaining 24 are scheduled for completion in February this year. The scheme has been dogged by various problems, including the initial contractor, Stirland, going into administration in 2022, delayed service diversions, unforeseen utility process delays, unforeseen builders' works linked to additional utility requirements and subsequent costs, adverse weather, and an extension of time claims associated with all the above. So as a result, and to ensure completion of the remaining 24 homes, we have here a request for further funding as outlined in section 2, and a recommendation to support option 4 to approve the recommendations to use additional internal and external sources to complete this scheme. There will be a bid submitted to Homes England, by the way, to support this. And I'll leave it there for the time being. Thank you.
Thank you. And by complete coincidence, I ended up delivering Christmas cards through that part of Chiddingfold, and you can see just how close to completion some of these sections are and how fantastic they will be when they are done. So this is just to get these over the line for the reasons that Janet has outlined. Can I have any other speakers? Liz?
I just want to say how supportive I am. You know, these homes are being built to such a high standard, and they are, you know, within Chiddingfold. Your need for affordable housing in that area is you know, is as it is across the borough, quite high. I was lucky to go to St Mary's Primary School, and we discussed about planning with Councillor Busby, and we spoke to the children there about, you know, building new properties and saying, you know, about the people that might live there and how they would contribute to the community. And it was a really great experience, and the children were doing it as a particular project, and they produced some amazing work. But it is really important as well to highlight the properties that we are building and delivering. And I know there has been, especially with the utilities, there's been some considerable problems, you know, which is beyond our control. But these houses will provide really brilliant homes for people, for families and residents. And I think, you know, it's really important that we complete these, and we have that those additional houses in our stock going forward. So I fully support this.
Any other speakers? Seeing none, then are the recommendations set out in the report as agenda item 12 agreed? Can I have all those in favour please indicate? Wonderful. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. And with no further business on the agenda, I can conclude the meeting at